recently, Adam Phillips at Bass Players United reached out to me and wanted to know if I would be willing to give you guys a lesson. And I told him I would really be happy to as soon as I got the time. Well, today I'm making the time, and so I first want to thank Adam and thank all of you guys at Bass Players United. And I hope what I share with you today can help to unlock some of that creativity and some understanding into what I'm going to talk about, which is harmonics. Okay, I want to try to be as clear and concise as I possibly can. I'm going to cover the fundamentals all the way to kind of some more advanced applications with harmonics. So I'm going to try to cover a wide range of stuff here for everybody. But what I won't talk about is the real science behind harmonics, stringed instruments, theory, fundamentals, all that sort of thing. There's plenty of research that goes back hundreds of years on the fundamentals of harmonics. So if you really want to study that, go to the Google and you can find it, okay? So there's some key basic elements before you even think about playing harmonics that you really need to do just to even have a chance, really. The first step is you want to pick close to the bridge. You know, and on my padula, I can roll it back and actually get more of this back pickup, and it punches through a little more. Well, I should also just say, what is harmonics? Harmonics is this bell-like sound, right? So to get that kind of chimey sound, you really need to play closer to the bridge for that to be present and heard. The second thing you want to make sure that you do is on your amplifier that you have the mid-range boosted up a good bit. Typically, I'm not a huge mid guy, but when you're playing harmonics, you really need to kind of up that up a little bit. Another thing that you can do for all you effects pedal guys is you can use a chorus pedal and just lightly engage and instantiate the chorus, but just barely have it in. I'm not a big crazy chorus guy, but if you just have it in just a little bit, it really makes these bell-like tones chime out even more. Excuse me. And of course, a compressor never hurts if it's set correctly. But for our purposes today, I'm not using any effects. I'm just going directly into my aguilar here. Okay. So but let's just start at the beginning, and let's just see how far we can go with this. All right. So again, harmonics are these bell-like sounds, and they're found all over the instrument. And the spot I'd like to start with is actually your tuning notes, the 5th and the 7th fret. So let's just start at the 7th fret on the G string and this D harmonic right here. Now here's the whole two things about harmonics, okay? Two very important things before we go any further. If you're if you're really into your technique and proper technique, which I try to be, I came up with some mandal technique. If you're familiar with that, 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. It's a classical technique for upright, and then when you get into thumb position, or what would be 12th fret basically on electric bass, you separate your fingers. That just goes away when you're playing harmonics, because if you're playing with correct technique and all your fingers work together and they're all down, when you're playing harmonics, you can't do that, because watch, if I play this D harmonic right here, and when I say that, I'm not pressing down, right? I'm just lightly playing over the fret wire to get that sound, okay? But now if I'm playing with correct technique and all my fingers are down, I don't get a sound. Even though I'm not pressing down, I'm just lightly pressing. These fingers have to be off the instrument. So that creates kind of a weird deal if you're really used to playing with real proper technique. So that might be a little bit of the learning curve, and the challenge is when you're playing with harmonics is not to let that kind of thing then creep into your really good technique when you're, just playing as a bass player in whatever setting you're playing in. That being said, when you play this 7th fret, you lightly press down again. You need to pick close to the bridge and the mid-range up a little bit, okay? So I want to point one other thing out. The sustain factor. If I play this note and keep my finger there on the string, it's still ringing, but now it's gone. So that lasted about 5 seconds. But now if I play the harmonic and take my hand off the instrument, it'll ring for 20, 30 seconds. It's still ringing, right? So again, another thing to kind of keep in mind is when you play harmonics, play them, take your hand off the string. You don't have to jerk it off right away, but it'll certainly, it'll sustain longer is my point if your hand is free and clear of the deal of keeping it down, if I'm making myself clear. Okay, so keep that in mind too for the sustain factor. So let's talk, now that you've got that in mind, let's talk about tuning your bass with harmonics for starters. That's how I like to do it. And I hate to admit this, but I will. I don't use a tuner. I don't like tuners. I think they're kind of a crutch for a lot of people. Music's is something we hear. It's about listening, and you should use your ear, especially if you're playing a fretless instrument, like fretless bass or upright bass, or any kind of instrument like that you have to really listen to your intonation and your pitch. I mean, on electric bass, if you tune it, it's in tune, and you're kind of there you go, unless you have internal intonation problems. But that being said, you really need to try to use your ears. But I'm not telling you need to do what I do, but typically, I would probably get blackballed for admitting this, but I don't use a tuner. So when I go do studio sessions, I typically will get an A from the piano, for example. Okay, that's an A440. That note is found on the 7th fret of the D string here, right? Okay, I'm just going to detune it. I'm in tune, but I'm going to detune it. Now you hear that? Those are called beats. That wavy pitch, and so obviously, it's kind of a fundamental thing, but you want to make sure that you're consistently playing that same pitch there, right? Okay. So once I get that note, my A in tune, which again is the harmonic, I'm not pressing anything down. Actually, I don't think that's in tune. Hold on. Let me do it again. A little sharp. Okay, there we go. Okay, so then I proceed to tune the bass by using the 7th and the 5th fret across. I'm going to again detune so you can kind of hear and tune up to it. And what's cool about this is if you play this and give it a good kind of a strong pluck, so to speak, your hands are free. And again, we talked about the sustain. So see, this is going to sustain if you're doing it right. And then you can use your ears to get that note in tune. And a lot of times it'll help if you go to symphonies and see how the first violins will tune. They'll go down like that in pitch, like this. Kind of bending it up into the pitch, from flat to correct. Now for me, the B string is really hard. It's so delicate. If I barely move this, it can really change. But once I get it there, it locks in really well. But sometimes that's really hard for me on that B string. Then I'll go back and get the G. Okay, so now I should be in tune. So that being said, why do I not use a tuner? Well, if I'm doing a studio session and there's a piano in a studio with air conditioning, and maybe it's hot in there or something, which can affect the tuning. And if I tune into a tuner and I'm seeing it's straight up and down, I'm in tune, I may not be in tune with the piano, and then therefore it might be a struggle on the session. And the same thing could be true for really guitar as well, and it's particularly if the 440 it might be a 439, A4, 439. There could be some issues there. So typically I like to find the pitch from another instrument, get the A note, and then I'll shut it down or turn my headphones off or whatever, and then proceed to tune myself to that. That's just how I do it. I know that's not proper, and I know a lot of guys would hate me for that, but I like to use my ears, is my point. I like to use my ears and not use my eyes. And so I would just encourage all you guys and girls to kind of keep that in mind, okay? So that being said, getting back to just the tuning here, you're lightly pressing down, and again, play the note, and then get your hand off, and that frees it to tune. All right, so let's move on. Natural harmonics. there's natural harmonics and there's artificial harmonics. Okay, natural harmonics. Let's just start with that. If I look at my open strings, hopefully you know those notes. Okay, G, D, A, E, B. If I go to my 12th fret and play the 12th fret, right, it's the same pitch pressed down, but it's also the same pitch with the harmonic. So here, those are the harmonics that produces the same pitch there. Now check this out. If I go to my 5th fret, it's also a G. So there's a G, there's a G, an octave above. You hear the difference? If I go to my 3rd fret, in between here, is even an octave above that. So you have, on all your open strings, okay, I'm just going to deal with the G to save time here. G, G at the 5th, and G at in the middle of the 3. It's really like what they would call a 3.2. It's almost like right by the fret dot, okay? So that would be true for all your notes here. And that's cool. And that right there can unlock some things. But here's what's mind-blowing about this, about harmonics. We said that this is G and G, right? Well, at the 5th note, at the 5th fret, that's a G harmonic. But when I press down, that's a C note. Whoa, that's weird to me. And to be honest, that was a stumbling block to get me into harmonics to begin with, because it was like I couldn't wrap my head around, well, wait a minute, I pressed down the note C, but the harmonic's at G. Well, that's... So, I'm just pointing that out because I want to try to help encourage you all that don't let that stop you from really getting beyond that, because that's what I'm pointing out about harmonics is a lot of times the notes are the same, and a lot of time, most of the time, they're not the same. Okay, so for example, I'm a big stickler on knowing your instrument. Okay, and anyone who's taken lessons with me, I'm not teaching anymore, but anyone that has taken lessons with me in the past knows that that I'm a hound for knowing your notes. So for example, if someone said to me, play a C sharp, okay, I know my instrument. I know my instrument. I know the notes. I know you can name a note, boom, I got it. And it's important. You got to know that on the fly, in the moment, when you're jamming and improv and you're on stage. You don't have time to be kind of trying to figure it out. You got to know your instrument. But when it comes to harmonics, that's a whole other matter, and sometimes that can be kind of frustrating. And so I just want to encourage you to try to, A, know your notes, know your instrument. That's fundamental. Know your instrument, okay? Know these notes. But then try to encourage you to go beyond that and start to learn what the harmonic notes are, even when they don't equal what the fretted note is, okay? So, yeah, so that being said, going back to the thing, I want to point one other thing about this. This 5th fret right here, even though those fretted notes don't equal the harmonic notes, that 5th fret right there is also the same as your 24th fret. So G, D, A, E, B is the same here, and it should be because that's 24 frets. And some of you may not have 24 frets, so I get 12 and 24. And then the same is true here. The two key places that most people tend to pop harmonics are the 7th and 5th fret, because again, that's your tuning notes. And well, that 7th fret, it's also the same. Those same pitches there are also the same as your 19th fret. Hear that? So that can open up some doors as far as like if you're learning a piece of music and you hear those actual pitches, but you're kind of wondering how they're doing, what they're doing. Keep that in mind, that they may not be playing those notes here. They may be playing it here, or vice versa. Same here. Might be up here, with combinations of other pitches. Let me give you an exercise to kind of practice a few things we've already talked about, and that is kind of the altered, funky, messed up technique, and also practice utilizing the tuning area, the 5th and 7th fret, okay? So what we're going to do here is play like a box pattern, When I call, say, a box, that's a box to me. You're playing real boxy, straight across the fingerboard. Let me let's see here. Let me put on the metronome. So what we're going to do is we're going to play harmonics. We're going to do 16th notes like this, and I'm going to work that across. Now, if you'll notice, my fingers are up, and I really don't like that, but that's just the way it has to be, again, to get that to lock in. And you'll notice another thing too. When I play the harmonic, I try to get my fingers off the notes for the sustain factor. Okay. Let's take it further. Let's try fives, playing 5 notes in one beat. Okay. So that might be kind of weird, it's foreign to some of you guys. Let me do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Let's rush a little bit. Where's my phone? Okay. That's my phone. Excuse me. All right. Now let's try sixes. Okay. So 6 notes or 32nd notes in one beat. Okay, and just to get used to that, and that's just kind of a whatever you want to call it, but it's just to get used to harmonics and those tuning notes, and to get in your hand wrapped around this whole idea. Okay, let's take it much further. Okay. There's a couple, well, there's a scale. It's not really a scale. I shouldn't say that. It's not a scale. But let me just play this first, okay? Okay, those notes are E, F sharp, A, B, D. My head's hurting. Is your head hurting? Mine's hurting. Okay, no. So, but what this produces here is basically an E minor 9 or a G major 7 sound. So I'm going to play a G major 7 chord, the 5th. Now, kind of have that sound in your mind, and now let me go back to these harmonics. Now let me play an E minor 9. Okay. Now, I'm going to point one thing out about the picking technique. When you're playing harmonics, and I'm playing that, right? When I go to my next string, that right there just cut off that first harmonic, right? And I don't really want to do that, but that's what happens because my fingers, running from string to string. That's how I play. So a lot of times when I'm playing harmonics, I like to pick with a combination of fingers, or like my fingernail. Now listen to the difference. Okay, let me play it version A. The only 2 that are really sustaining are those last couple, right? Because I've killed all the other ones by the way I played it. Now let me play version B, but using my fingernail. Ooh, you hear it's nice and lush and rich, and you hear a lot of them ringing out, right? And that's because I didn't kill. So you have to experiment again with an almost kind of an altered right hand technique that might be foreign to how you normally would play traditionally, in the traditional sense. So harmonics are going to push you and challenge you and to try different things. And I can't remember now, but I think I referenced Portrait of Tracy earlier, how you should definitely learn that. There's moments of Portrait of Tracy, where you really, not necessarily the beginning part, although it's really cool to play. When you get into the depth of the song, where you really have to alter your hand, you have to do some wacky things. As far as all your techniques involved. So don't be afraid when you're playing that piece particularly, or any piece for that matter, utilizing harmonics, to think outside the box. And I just encourage you to think outside the box, and to feel like you do have to alter some things in order to get that sustain, to get that sound, to get just to get the nuances of harmonics. Okay. Here's well, anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, this particular series of notes, okay, is really this, which is really almost like an E pentatonic. So any kind of E minor nines or really E susses or G major sevens, you know, you can kind of utilize that kind of sound and see. So you see what you can come up with in that area. There's a scale. It's not true. It's not a scale, but I just like the way this sounds. Let's listen to this. I didn't mean to do that last one. There we go. All right. So note-wise, what I just played would be this. Okay. E flat, E, F sharp, blah 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 blah. Okay, but it's got kind of a nice flow to it. It's almost the reverse of Portrait of Tracy, right? And so I don't know if you can see this, but here's the unique thing about harmonics. I think I had said this, but there's harmonics found within frets. So like this here, I'm actually playing two harmonics with inside one fret. They're both found in that fourth fret right there. But it's the way I'm doing this would be fourth, fifth, fourth. Then repeat that. Fourth, fifth, fourth, fourth, fifth, fourth, fourth, fifth, fourth, fourth, and then the top note. That's just kind of a neat sound that you can practice. Just again, if you notice, my technique's kind of radical. I mean, all my fingers are coming up, and that's really not proper, but in this setting it is. Okay. I'm going to talk about two more things with you guys. Years ago, I want to talk about sliding harmonics. Years ago, I did an arrangement of Led Zeppelin's "Going to California," a decade ago or so at this point. And there's a part in the song in my arrangement where I did like a sliding thing, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot. To get there, let me just kind of play it a little bit here. Right there. Okay, right there in that part of the song. What I'm doing here is I'm playing these harmonics, but I'm adding this slide. Then I'm adding a fretted pitch to round, that's the tonic root note, to round out that D major triad chord. Okay, so sliding harmonics are really awesome, and they're really, I'm really fond of sliding harmonics, okay? But particularly on a fretless instrument, it's the coolest thing you could possibly do. So what do? You play the harmonic, okay? And unlike where I said earlier where your finger, you know, your hands come off the fingerboard, play the note, keep your finger there, but then press down quickly without getting a pitch, and then slide into the note. So the way I did that, okay, and I want to go a little further in this song here because I want to point something else out. So let me do that again. Right there, I incorporated this open D 5th fret. Now, what am I trying to do? As I'm trying to show you that. Now this is taking it one step further, in that I'm incorporating harmonics, but I'm also playing a fretted note. And that's challenging because you're either used to everything down all the time, or you get into harmonics and everything is kind of off the strings, and now you're doing both. And that's challenging. So I just want to press you to experiment with that. But in this particular application, kind of use that open D there to get that. So again, okay, so there's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do, both doing a sliding technique, not really a technique, but a sliding harmonic situation here, as well as fretting notes coupled with harmonics. The last thing I want to point out is artificial harmonics. Now this is where it gets really interesting. Basically, you know, a lot of times if you go to play harmonics, like you might go over, like say, I'm doing this intentionally, by the way, going, wow, I can't really get a harmonic here. Why can't I get a harmonic here? Well, there's certain places on the instrument that just won't really produce that, just won't produce the pitch. Like I said, the tuning area, you know, is just the most logical. It's just kind of, you don't really have to do much to get the sound. It's kind of built in. But there's certain places in the bass where you can't really quite get a pitch, a harmonic note. So there's a thing called artificial harmonics where you artificially create that. Now there's several ways to do that. You can use, I will show you this, but let me break it down. You can use your thumb sideways on the string and pick like this. You can tap, which I like to do too. Eddie Van Halen kind of made that famous. Like for example, let me go to an F here. Like that idea, okay, where what you're doing is you're playing whatever you're fretting, you take it up an octave and you mirror. You're basically mirroring exactly what you're doing here, but you can tap that out. So when I change, I'm changing here too, right? So I'm mirroring that. That's tapping, but you could do the same thing like this. Let me give you an example. Another one of the songs that I like a lot that I've recorded before is Giant Steps by John Coltrane. To get to my spot, let me just go ahead and kind of reference the whole piece here. Right here. That. So here's another example of two harmonics with the fretted note. Then I change my fretted note, which has common tones here, so I'm doing really like a 2/5 just by changing the fretted note. But then here I do artificial harmonics right here. That. So what it is, the last chord of the resolution of Giant Steps is really E flat major 7, right? This sound. So, but to simplify it, I played E flat or really the 8-5-1. There's my phone again. 8-5-1, right? So, but what I did is I go up an octave, and I could do that here. Like I mentioned a minute ago, tapping that out, could do that. But I don't have time to really, it just doesn't work in that context of that song. So, I found another way to do that, which is to go up 2 octaves. So here's the spot, up an octave. Now I need to mirror that another octave, so that would be about there. And by putting my finger on the string and keeping this really actually held down hard, I mean I'm fretting these notes, I can get the artificialness of that. So I do want to talk about one other thing in the Giant Steps song, which is if we just take that melody, just the top note. Now I was playing it with a chord, right? But if we just take the top note, I could play it like this, utilizing my thumb. And what I'm doing is I'm following, I'm mirroring. It's hard to play and talk at the same time, but I'm mirroring exactly what I'm doing down here, up here, by using my thumb to like. I know probably a lot of you've seen this before, but this is how you do it. Whatever it is that you want to do artificially to produce, you can get harmonics on anything. You just have to find ways to do it. Either A, the harmonics are there, or they're not where you think they are, or you artificially can produce them by going up an octave or 2 octaves, or using a series of rakes, or using your thumb. Okay, so there's all kinds of song examples after song examples that people will utilize harmonics. But in closing, let me just say that I hope that I would try to encourage you guys and girls to really explore harmonics, explore them, because they can really unlock some really interesting situations and sounds and creative stuff with what you're working with in a band context or your own compositions. It can really add a lot of really cool colors and textures to the songs that you're working on. So don't be scared of harmonics and don't be afraid to use them. But I will say, don't overuse them either. I personally am not a big fan of hearing somebody just plopping them in just because they can. So don't. That's just me, but I don't. I like to hear them used in a musical way, not in a way as a show off kind of look at me, look at how these cool sounds I can make. Find really great places and ways to incorporate harmonics into the stuff that you're working on and continue to make beautiful music with them. And I wish you all well with it, and I'm going to continue to work on it. You know, I love harmonics, and I hope you guys will dig into your bass a little more, learn your notes, learn the notes of the harmonics, and experiment with some of the ideas we talked about. So on that note, I bid you guys farewell. Thank you very much.